Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at a game called Love Letter. Now, this is a game made by Nomad Games and published by Asmodee Digital, which Asmodee Digital tends to only really make digital versions of board games and card games. Not usually not collectible card games or deck builder card games, though, per se. Um, and generally most Asmodee digital games are overpriced and under quality. So we're hoping that we'll see a slight difference here. Um, One thing I can say immediately seems weird is that the audio is really low. Like, that seems really, really low. Maybe that's just for the menu, but well, let's just turn it up a little bit for a moment here. Um, there's a shocking lack of features for this game. In case I didn't mention, it came out in October 24th of 2018 on Steam. Uh, there are no Steam achievements, and it has been a really, really long time since I've played any game that doesn't have at least a couple of Steam achievements. And it's kind of stupid to care about Steam achievements, so I almost applaud the game for doing that, but it is kind of weird for what is effectively a board game, because now you've got very little reason to play this game multiple times. Settings wise, there's windowed mode and increased game speed, and you can pause the game in the background, and that's it. There's no resolution or anything like that. This front screen looks pretty empty and barren, unless throughout gameplay you would unlock all the potential suitors and maybe suitoresses, if that's a real word. I don't think it is. In the background. Love Letter was an interesting game when I first heard about it, in the fact that it is a game of strategy more to capture a suitor or a mate, more than games that tend to be around defeating enemies and violence. And you have here Asmodee promoting its other games, which I've covered some of these, and some of like the most popular ones like Carcassonne and Catan. I don't know if I've actually shown off Catan. Tend to have a lot of DLC, tend not to really be that good. I did show off Ticket to Ride that had a ton of DLC and not that good. They're also jumping between many different platforms, so there's no guarantee that all of these are on Steam per se, and they really don't have enough games to have 4 different categories at the top here, because you can see here under the family category, instead of the featured category, there's advertising Catan, VR, and then they're advertising Catan Universe, and then Carcassonne, and then Ticket to Ride, and then Ticket to Ride First Journey. This one doesn't even have a name on it, so how would you be able to tell? And then this is literally an advertisement, I think, to buy the actual board games. It often feels like the Asmodee games, digital versions of their games, are intentionally made to be mediocre, so they don't replace the cardboard developments and versions of the games. But honestly, digital versions should come free with the purchase of a cardboard game, and or be cheaper or free. I'm not sure in the next 10 years there will be a lot of real world cardboard games made and sold. It was already an extremely niche audience, and see, this is pretty much promoting all the real world versions of the game. Honestly, I kind of think that countries around the world should get together and pass laws making it illegal to have such disposable toys produced. I mean, we in a bigger sense, it's not a very capitalistic or freedom concept, but in a bigger sense, there's a lot of plastic, and plastic's made from oil. Almost always. Some toy manufacturers have started making plastic from like corn oil instead of petroleum oil, and that's a step forward in plant-based oils, besides just corn oil. But there's a lot of plastic made from petroleum that ends up just in the garbage fairly quickly. 5-10 years later, there's a lot of trees getting chopped down to make cardboard. Inks tend to come from specific minerals that also can pollute the water table. There's a lot going on there to make what is a very disposable form of entertainment. And there really hasn't been much in the way of trying to reduce packaging or reduce environmental impact. And I don't want to sound like a crazy environmentalist, but I think half of most parents would also be happy if there was just straight up a law that says, no, we're going to make all toys meet a certain level of conservativeness as far as just how wasteful their content is. And board games are the worst example of it, because you lose one piece, one card in a board game, and you've compromised it quite a bit. And most board games get put on a shelf and played maybe once a year at most, whereas digital could easily replace that. And it would be much nicer if you had simply on the toy shelves a even if it is just a cardboard or plastic gift card, but buying those gift cards and installing that on a computer or a Switch or consoles, or you just get the copy of that game on whatever consoles it's available for. And as wasteful as cell phones might be, if a cell phone could digitally hold all of the Asmodee games, it would still be way more useful and I think less wasteful than having an entire shelf in a house full of the Asmodee games. Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there. I did not mean to do that. If anything, that kind of highlights how there's not a lot to say here. Sure, I could point out the cleavage. It's nice cleavage, nice bit of shoulder. You could log into Asmodee if you wanted to. I don't see a reason. And there's obviously leaderboards here that have been hacked completely. So, yeah, I don't know what you really take from that. Maybe this is an indication that 29,000 people have played this game. That seems reasonable. Let's just start playing. So, yeah, since I've never played this game before and only have a basic understanding of it, and that was from many years ago, let's learn to play. Love Letter is a game of risk, deduction, and luck. You must get your love letter into Prince Annetta's hand while deflecting the letters from competing suitors. Okay, so who is Princess Annetta's? Because there's just me, and that's odd that it doesn't have like a Steam profile or anything to change me into Rydo. We have a coin that's flipping, but I'm not sure if it's actually flipping towards anything. Let's see, this would just bring up this menu again, and then I assume this would just bring up a help screen. Let's see, they probably will explain all of this in a second. And arguably, this could be one of those cases where it's a card game that has such a limited number of cards that it only really makes sense to play it a few times before you've figured out the best strategy, and that's that. And this would be the kind of game that would need potentially an expansion to come out every 6 months or so to give you new cards and get people on the hook to buy even more cardboard. Also, while I wish video games and games in general did target things that weren't so violent, and Love Letter is kind of a great example of an attempt at that, one cannot deny the reality that this game, in either its digital form or in the real world form, just being called Love Letter, does not feel like a game you could have a bunch of 12-year-old boys playing with you, uh, or playing with their sisters. And maybe this is too mature of a game for any 12-year-old. I'm not sure. I doubt it, but yeah, this does feel a lot like the girl versions of board games that are just incredibly pandering and kind of sexist in what they depict. And there's yet to been a good happy medium. Things like chess and checkers, I guess, are pretty neutral on the genders, and I would say Monopoly seems mostly genderless. But then you definitely get into particularly themed monopolies, and a Disney princess monopoly is clearly targeted to little girls, whereas a Transformers monopoly game, assuming there was one, would definitely be more themed towards boys. Or at least it feels that way. Maybe that's my own bias. Maybe Transformers and a lot of those cartoons that are action-based really have broader appeal. Let's continue. From a deck of only 16 cards, each player starts with one secret card in their hand. They draw one from a deck and then play one of the two they now have. So, yeah, incredibly limited in the number of cards. That seems ridiculous. It seems like you could easily just triple the copies of cards and change a deck from 16 to 48, which would be much more reasonable. Usually a single player's deck is somewhere between 30 and 60 cards. So it would be probably better to even multiply it by 6. Unless these cards are just so powerful that they wouldn't work if there's 3 copies of them. But also having bigger decks and duplicates allows for more randomness, and that's why most card games tend to have higher deck counts instead of on top of just trying to sell more cards. So if a deck has literally only 16 cards, then one card being destroyed in Love Letter destroys your entire set. Try to knock the other players out of the game by having the highest value card at the end of the round. So this doesn't sound too different than some of the other standard card games, and that will definitely be a question here is, could you play Love Letter just with a regular deck of cards? And I would definitely argue a regular deck of cards that has thousands of different variations of solitaire and other kinds of card games to play with it is the type of toy that probably should be allowed to still be made and sold, compared to a Unitasker card game or a Unitasker set of cards. Alright, so the card in your hand is who currently carries the message of love for the princess. Okay. So I'm getting the metaphor here. And obviously you could change this quite a bit. And hovering over this brings up a box, but there's nothing special about the priest apparently. Which kind of makes it feel like that a box shouldn't pop up, but I guess maybe that would be confusing too. At the start of a player's turn, they draw a new card from the deck. So far, it seems like your goal is just to always have a higher card unless there's some kind of trick that the lower cards have. I'm not sure what the stars mean. I'm not sure what the hearts mean. This marker seems to indicate whose turn it is, which you don't only really need that if you're going to do a lot during a turn. You play one of these 2 cards by following the instructions on the card. Click on the priest card to view it. Playing a priest card allows you to view another player's cards, revealing who carries their message. Well, if you have 2 cards, are both cards carrying the message? Or is it just the first card you drew? I'm confused already. I can also see why the audio would have been turned down pretty low. It's already gotten repetitive in less than 10 minutes. The number shown here is the value of the card. The cards range from 1 to 8. So far you could just take all of the 1 to 8 numbered cards from a regular deck and play. But then you'd probably need a cheat sheet to see what a 2 does. You'll use the priest ability to view the opponent's card. Exit the card by clicking it again. This one is until your next turn, ignore all effects from the other player's cards. This is a kind of nice animation that they've got. It's almost like live 2D, which is kind of the new hotness in taking 2D animations and then making them kind of bounce back and forth. In fact, it might very well be live 2D, just programmed in a weird way. But you could also just make a flat animation that loops. It's not particularly the best implementation of live 2D if that's the case, and here you have them breathing in and expanding quite a bit. Let's see. Drag it from the bottom to target the player's area. So I guess that's the player's area. I do like animating cards. Otherwise this would be a very stagnant game, but it already feels pretty dull and stagnant with just all this red back here. Red for a tabletop is a mistake, even if it's thematically accurate, because that just draws your eye so much to an area that you shouldn't have your eye drawn to. I'm seeing my attention drawn directly to this big empty area and this big empty area. Alright. So the opponent, this is the card your opponent has in their hand. Click the card to continue. Is a 1 guard, and it seems like they are playing a little bit with historical accuracy here in that we have a female sword carrying guard of what looks high status. Still not really sure what the stars have to do with anything. It doesn't really feel like there can be a star system in a game that has only 16 cards. Name a non-guard card and choose another player. If that player has that card, he or she is out of the round. Okay. But did I just play the priest, or do I keep the priest card? Because in activating the priest, I almost certainly would have told the opponent that I have a priest card. Is now your opponent's turn. Your used cards are, that should be are discarded face up into your play area. And see, for such a simplistic game, you'd think that just grammar checking would be something you would do. Not that I'm the best speaker in the world or anything, but I'm also not making a product trying to sell it for a high price. So, I use this to see a card from Talon, so it leaves a kind of sub-symbol effect. And I'm not sure what these little dots here mean. Oh, I guess they are just better descriptions of the same thing. I guess that's helpful in case these images don't immediately make sense. So they draw a card and play the card to guess that I had a 7. Your opponent used the card we knew they had to guess if you had the countess, which is the number 7, I guess. But we don't have the countess. When the card is played, it is shown to all players along with the results of the action. The player who played the card is shown on the left. The action is shown in the center. In this case, the guess of the countess, which they're still not really making a good explanation that the number 7 card is the countess. They should have shown that first and foremost. And the target player is shown on the right. What really this shows that Love Letter probably only makes sense if you're playing with multiple people, and I am not sure if there is any online playability in this game at all. Even split screen co-op would be kind of impossible, so you're getting quite the inferior product. Really, all this could be is a way to play the game when you have nobody else to play with you, which if you don't consistently have like a weekly game night and people who want to play these games with you, there's kind of no reason to want to play these games in the first place. There are better single player video games out there than simulations of real world family games, for lack of a better term. So I don't think this serves its market well at all without an online service. If the guess was corrected, the loser's seal will shatter and a wreath will surround the winner's icon. If the guess failed, the red cross will appear over the center icon. Okay. Close the card. So, yeah. But this one succeeded. But then the seal didn't shatter and we didn't get a reef or anything like that. So, I guess maybe that's only in more aggressive actions. You found the princess. Click on her now. So the princess is straight up a card. And she is the character on the screen. Well, if the princess holds the love letter herself, which I guess we're assuming that's the case, then do you end the game now? Because that would be super easy. If you discard the princess for any reason, then she is tossed your letter into the fire and you're out of the round, but not the whole game. So you can never toss the princess, or you don't want to, unless there's some other reason. And princess is a 1 star, which maybe the stars indicate how many cards are in the deck of that, and that there's only 1 princess card, but then why have hollow stars at that point? And that still wouldn't really make sense, because the other character, the The guard had like 5 or 6 stars. Dismiss the princess. Yeah, there's 5 stars, 3 are filled in. I don't think there's 5 1 cards in the deck, if there's really only 16 cards in the deck, which really it does feel like there are only of that. Let's see how the handmaiden can help us in this situation. Click her now. Until next turn, ignore all effects from other players. Playing the handmaiden makes us immune to effects from other players' cards. Very useful. You close this card. Discarding the princess would cause you to lose a round, so use the handmaid now. Which I guess you straight up just drag it into the discard pile to activate it. That's a weird way for things to go. And then your opponent was forced to discard their card because you used the handmaid to protect yourself. Interesting. And so this is the discard animation. Your letter is safe with the princess for now, but who's that walking down the hall? It's Princess Annette's father. What will he do? Click his card. See, and this definitely feels more like a narrative game that would very possibly be better told as either a single story or more like a stealth game. Yeah, if you had to sneak around a randomly generated castle trying to get a letter to the princess, that would be a much more actionable, action-oriented game. Of course, that's a very unfair comparison to what this is, but the narrative, I think, is so far not helping the actual gameplay. It's way easier to say the bigger numbers win always, or choose a wild, or you're going for 3 of a kind or a full house, or simple rules like that that you would see in regular card games. We don't have a narrative when playing poker talking about how the 2s are better than the 3s, and that the 3s represent like dogs and then 2s represent cats, and like there's just nothing like that. And maybe at one time there was something like that, but not really. That just overcomplicates things. This is an example, I think, of a gameplay mechanic being weak and then them trying to zhuzh it up and make it seem like it's better than it is with a narrative and artwork. Let's see what the king does. Trade hands with another player of your choice. But you don't want that, but you may have to do that anyways, because either that or you lose the round. You're out the round. And I think my understanding of rounds might be wrong. I was thinking the round would be just your player and every other player's turn, but there may simply be 4 rounds in the game completely, so it's going to be potentially, when you're not doing the tutorial, a fairly fast-paced round system. King Arnaud IV will allow you to trade hands with another player when used. Discarding the princess will cost you to lose the round, so there's no choice but to play the king. Drag the king to your opponent's area to trade hands with him. Alright. The remaining cards in the deck are shown here. The number of cards in the holder will decrease as the game progresses. And honestly, there needs to be a number here. Like, it would be incredibly easy to have had a number show up instead of making me potentially count. I'm counting that there's about 4 cards left. That should not be the number. There's 2 here, plus another 5 here. That would be 9. 9 out of 16 should say that there are 7 cards left. Unless these 3 numbers here are some kind of secret cards left on the side. When the player has to draw a card and the deck is empty, the round is over. So you end the game when you've played all the cards. Which it almost makes it feel like there is a collection of probably closer to 30 to 60 cards, but you only draw 16 of them per round. Yeah, 16, 32, maybe 64 cards even for 4 rounds would make sense. That's a weird way to end the round too, to always have to exhaust your deck. When the round ends, all players reveal their cards and the highest value card wins, which we know would be the queen at this point. A queen always would win as long as she's in the run. Your opponent played the prince on you, forcing you to discard your card and draw a new one. Okay. You can make yourself discard a card. So then, theoretically, you could discard 2 cards. This prince does not look good as far as his face. And yeah, the Baron doesn't look particularly good, and the King doesn't look particularly good. I'm not really liking the art style. I like the fashion, it looks good, but yeah, looking at this face, this is hardly your standard Disney prince, a young guy looking character. So we get the guard and the countess. Drew the guard to replace your baron and have drawn the countess for your turn. Interesting. Interesting how this is all zoomed in. And I can use the mouse wheel incredibly slowly to scroll back and forth here, but it is incredibly slow. So yeah, this guy doesn't look great. She looks alright, but not the best looking Renaissance era drawing. King looks pretty awful, and he's supposed to be the father, so it kind of makes sense that he'd be an older guy. But then the Baron looks even older, and he looks awful too. It's just not good looking people. And I guess you have to click on 1X to close all of them. The guard looks fine, but really not great. I think I would have probably skipped the live 2D animations in favor of just having better artists or a slightly better art style. This looks a little too rough. It looks a little too dirty, for lack of a better word. It's just a little too much shading and dark color tones, which really contrasts from the bright red again. Let's see, now this one has 1 more star. See, there's 4 out of 5 stars on this card. And this was 3 out of 5 stars before. So it is telling us, I think, how many cards we have left in the deck. Anyways, so it's making it super easy, because then we know for a fact that there is a Baron and a guard in the deck and a prince. If you have this card and the king or prince is in your hand, you must discard this card. Okay, well, we don't have the king or prince. Otherwise, the countess seems to be to not really have an effect. Yeah, and there clearly is an attempt to balance out effects. More negative effects the higher the number, more positive effects the lower the number. She doesn't look terrible as the countess, but what I would almost assume you would want to see here in a game like this is a lot of princesses, a lot of suitors. You could really go like the whole Disney princess route and just have a Sleeping Beauty and equivalent. And since all of those Disney movies and the old ones are based on public domain characters anyways, it would be very easy to have somebody that is slightly similar to that and inspired by that, and as long as it doesn't look too visually close to the way they are depicted, uniquely depicted in the Disney movies, Disney wouldn't be able to sue you. By uniquely depicted, I mean if there is something like Rapunzel, who is described in the open source story as having really long flowing hair, that's not something Disney artistically contributed to it. However, if in Tangled, Rapunzel was depicted as having a tattoo with scissors on her arm, for instance, just to make something random up, that would not have been something in the story. So if you copied that, then you would potentially get sued for copyright infringement of some sort. But yeah, I would have expected in a game like this to see a lot more princesses, and honestly I would have kind of leaned towards the idea that this would have been more of a waifu, to use a Japanese word, style game where there was just going to be a lot of really good looking cutesy, doesn't have to be in the moe anime style, but just good looking cutesy Renaissance era countesses and characters. And husbandos is the equivalent of waifu in as far as good looking male suitors, and we're definitely not seeing that. This looks pretty visually ugly, and I would not have expected that from Love Letter. I would have expected us to lean more towards a romance, visually, romance visuals, something close to it, like a romance visual novels. Although most romance visual novels, again, are in the anime style. Stroke of luck. You know that the opponent has the princess, so you can use the guard to knock them out of this round. Oh, yeah. Use the guard on the opponent and select the princess as the target. Alright, so the only card we haven't seen is the one. Otherwise, we have like the entire set of cards. We've seen them all. You have won the round, and that broke that and put a reef around that. And so that completes the round. You gain a heart when you win the round of Love Letter. These track Princess Annette's ever-growing affection for those suitors whose letters reach us. First player to field the row of hearts wins. So it's not even best of 4 rounds, it's first to 4 wins. And so I guess everything gets shuffled over and dealt again. This is now the second round. The cards were shuffled and dealt, giving you the guard and a countess. Let's take a closer look at a deduction and odds. Click the guard. The stars above on a card show how many of that card are in the deck. Which does that mean there's literally only one card in this collection of the subset of all the cards, or does that mean there are always 5 cards in the deck? That doesn't seem right either. And see, this is a fairly simplistic game, but we've been going 40 minutes and they're still explaining things. They're not getting into the game very fast. For example, there are 5 cards in the deck, so there are now 5 stars on a... Yeah, so there are 5 stars on the guard card. When a card is revealed, one of the stars is filled in, helping you keep track on what might be left in the deck. Dismiss the card. At the start of each round, some cards are removed from the deck and set aside. And so what do these numbers mean? Because they've changed. The number of removed cards depends on the number of players, and one of these cards is always a secret. So, why would you have that secret card? The deck has 2 Baron cards in it, so use your guard to see if your opponent has a Baron. But you only ever have 2 cards in your hand, which is definitely not going to make a very fun... it's not going to make a very complicated game, ever. This is... Go fish with some extra rules, really. Your opponent didn't have the Baron, so it's now their turn. And then you are left with only 1 card. Countess must be discarded if the other card is the king or the prince, which it isn't. However, the Countess likes to play mind games and can be discarded even if you do not have the king or prince. Discard the Countess now by moving her into the play area. So, knowing that the king is in the pile of removed cards, your opponent guessed you would have the prince. Okay, so the king is 7, right? Or is it 6? The mind games worked, the count of the Countess worked. Use your prince yourself to discard your guard now and draw a new card. Okay. So the 3 discarded cards are the priest, the handmaiden, the king. The king is a 6, which pretty much means we've seen all the handmaids. And the way things are being depicted is very weird. And it feels like these discarded cards should be bigger and probably over here where there's enough empty space. And I know eventually we'll have 3 opponents potentially going against us, and that'll take up this empty space. But right now, that's weird. So the only card you don't know about is the secret card. And otherwise, you know exactly how many of every other card exists. So you pretty much want to draw the cards. You want to draw as many cards as possible because that'll increase your odds of ending up with the princess, which there's only 1 of them anyways. You and another player secretly compare hands. The player with the lower value is out of this round. Which, okay, that means I win. Secretly only makes sense when you're playing against multiple players. Player with the lowest card value is out of the round. As there's only 1 princess, go ahead and win the round. And see, at this point, it would feel like, okay, one more win, and you should just win the game. 3 out of 4, but it seems like I'm only halfway through. You now know all there is to becoming the princess suitor. Finish the game and fill in all the remaining hearts. Okay. So the tutorial just drops you after the second victory. Let's see. Well, let's play. Well, a guard apparently can't guess a guard. So just play that and see what happens. I was gonna guess a guard, but I guess eliminating a guard doesn't really help anything. And then I guess you have to make this one discard their hand. I guess at this point I probably would want to just turn up the sound effects a little bit. But yeah, this definitely feels like Asmodee Digital has once again put in very little effort. As far as just polishing this game and giving it features or anything. So we see a priest, and him playing the priest actually doesn't do anything, so. And that's the first time we've just played all the way towards the end. And honestly, since the 8 is here, the princess is here, you know you've won. So you just look at them and immediately win there. Because it doesn't matter what card they have, they're not going to be the 7. And see, they can give me points all they want for their internal leaderboards, which have already been hacked, but without any achievements or anything, there is zero motivation in the overall Steam system to want to play this game much at all. And that experience of learning such a basic game is what wasn't really great. 48 minutes we're into this recording, it's just like, yeah, that was nothing. And usually what I feel like is the case, there is public multiplayer and private multiplayer, which is good because I was afraid that there wouldn't be that. There seems to be maybe different. Let's see what we can do. You could change the number of tokens to win, and you can add more players randomly. So 4 hearts to win when you have 4 people. But by clicking classic here, I thought it was taking me to a page where 7 is the max. Interesting. And you can hide scene cards, but that is literally all you can do. This is so cheap. You can't change a level of difficulty on the challengers or anything like that. Yeah, normally I would think this would be a game that maybe playing on a cell phone would make a little bit more sense, and certainly that would make a small bit more sense instead of playing it on a PC. But no, I just don't think that there's enough game here to justify, even in the real world, owning this, let alone in the digital world owning it. Interesting. There are no cards discarded when you have 4 players. Okay, we now know he has the handmaid. We'll have to... And see, this moves a little fast, but whatever. And see, that guy just made a stupid mistake looking for the prince. Yeah. This guy looked for the prince, knowing, or should have known, that the prince had already been played and there's only 2 princes in the deck. Let's see if we can guess the princess. Yeah, this moves far too fast. As the countess. This one is immune, so I can't do anything there. Let's run the risk and see if we win. Nope, we lost. They didn't really show us what their cards had. Yeah, what I want here is not an option to increase game speed. Let's do that just for fun, but I want an option to slow down game speed because this is moving too fast. Yeah, you would have to basically be an expert at the game to run this. Yeah, you basically have to be an expert at this game to move this fast. It's not realistic. And I kind of just have to wonder, is it worth it to just randomly play? Because yeah, this really isn't accounting for a social deduction. And see, there is a number 1 that shows up here. So why was it not showing up before? I guess you just want to kind of make it towards the end. Yeah, it really doesn't make sense that there wouldn't be just a number here. Always. There is just straight up a flaw I would say, in this card design. There's just not enough cards, not enough variety of cards. Like, there should be 4 copies of the Baron, 4 copies of the Guard, 4 copies of the Countess, 4 copies of the Princess. If you did that, then you easily could play this with just a standard deck of cards, and even now you could easily play this as with a standard deck of cards, because even following the rules you could have the 4 aces and a joker all be guards, and every other character has only 2 or 3 copies of them, so that's easy enough to do. Plus, a standard deck of cards could easily go above the number 8, and you could get a 9 card, a 10 card, a jack, a queen, and a king card to give more effects. And it would take me less than an hour to think of some other effects. First of all, like, you could have a 9 card where everybody shuffles their cards to the person to the left of them, a 10 card, everybody shuffles their card to the person to the right of them. A king card could be everybody discards their hand back into the deck and draws the same number of cards. A queen card should probably replace the number 8 card, just to make more sense. But generally speaking, yeah, generally speaking, a queen card could do something fairly interesting. Pick a specific person to make them shuffle their cards back into the deck, or discard their hand and draw. Jack card could make somebody else draw a card, which usually would be pretty bad, but might end the round faster. Okay. Sibling rivalry. Interesting. Prince and the Princess. That did unlock some kind of achievement, I guess, but where are these achievements? They have to be something else. Let's see. Definitely am not winning. Yeah, you drastically decrease your odds of winning when you have 4 players. Yeah, and this help is, I guess, a nice little cheat sheet in case you need it. Let's see. Yeah, and sadly, an hour in, I have nothing more to say about this game. The actual core game is too simplistic. I will say, just to give some backstory, the reason I even know about Love Letter is because many years ago there was a startup YouTube channel called Geek and Sundry that generally fizzled out, and they had a series that was fairly popular, and most people probably still remember it, called Tabletop, and every episode they would cover 1 or 2 new tabletop games, and they would make it look really good and really interesting. And honestly, I think that probably just applauds their level of production value, because in retrospect, this is not an interesting game at all. Like, I can't even make it look interesting for an hour. This almost certainly does play a little bit better if people are sitting around drinking, getting a little drunk, and then talking things out and thinking. But this doesn't... It's in a weird, mushy middle. It doesn't feel like it's a kid's game at all. It seems a little too complicated with its rule sets, and it doesn't seem complicated enough to be an adult's game. So I have no idea who the target audience really should be for this. This definitely doesn't feel like it's for little boys. It doesn't feel like it's for little girls. It doesn't feel like it's for teenage boys, teenage girls. It doesn't feel like it's for young adults or college age people. It feels like there was just kind of a minimum effort put into like a real minimum effort to making the actual card game, and then a real minimum effort on top of that to make the digital game. But I don't know what you could really add to a game like this that doesn't just change it completely. There's no DLC whatsoever on this. This game came out in October of 2018. It is rated very positively on Steam, 91% positive, which probably just means people knew what they were getting into, and then it only has 130 reviews for what is effectively a 3-year-old game, which highlights its not being a really relevant game and being too niche for its own good. Yeah. See if that is that. There's no button here on the leaderboards to see where you are, and I imagine you can't even get on the leaderboards until you've gotten into the Asmodee digital login. So it seems like it just popped up that sibling rivalry achievement for no reason. It does not seem to be integrated into anything at all. Let me just double check on Steam that there are no achievements. Yeah. There are no achievements. There's nothing here, nothing here. If we were to make a private multiplayer and create it, then you would have to just give a share code. You could have up to 186 seconds, or down, or all the way off, I guess, or as low as 30 seconds on the turn timer. And you could play one game, which I assume is that, up to 7 rounds. And then there's a share button. Yeah. There's definitely not a lot going on there. We aren't revealing anything here. And honestly, it is pathetic in the fact that these are in shadow because they didn't bother to animate any characters at all. Like there aren't 12 male suitors or female suitors, or 12 characters in general on the screen. Even if you were to reflect this, which these shadows are just reflections, there's barely 6 people. here. And one of them would be the king. So, yeah. Asmodee has once again managed to disappoint me. We could play one like quick round, and see, that's pretty much what you would want to do. I think is just one quick round experience. And yeah, definitely the game changes completely. Well, that was a quick loss. I don't know what these coins are about. Let's see. Interception. Use the guards to correctly guess another player's card. Plus 10 plus 2 times the cards remaining. So the achievements aren't so much achievements as they are modifiers that give you a slightly higher score. But there aren't multiple game scores, and it seems like my score just reset. And see, now am I back to the default mechanic? Yes. So every time I would want to play it the way I would want to play it, I would have to come in here, adjust it down to one game. There's just like no longevity in this, though. So yeah, if you were playing this at like a pub or a bar or something, and then random people were walking up and saying, "Hey, I want to play next round," and people would just drop in and drop out, you would still need a couple of people, or at least one person, who would be willing to sit there all night and play this over and over again. But I don't know. And so that gives you the interception, which honestly I don't think you could get all the modifiers that would exist. And that put me from 400 to 472. The score just means nothing. Maybe it means something if you get the Asmodee login. Maybe it continues there, but they're not even explaining that. You'd think that it would say something here as far as login. I frankly wouldn't mind it popping up and giving a little bit of an advertisement. I'm surprised there isn't DLC also that would just add more content, but it's just not here. Yeah, either digitally or physically. I couldn't imagine somebody would want to spend more than 20 minutes playing this game, because once you get it, you get it. This is a far cry away from something like Clue, where this is pretty bad. Yep. Yeah, playing once doesn't work either. I think you would want to play till like three victories with 4 players would probably be where you'd really want to go. Something like this, and then maybe you go conservative down to 2. Yeah, even if I was going to pull out a deck of cards and Love Letter was known by other players, I would totally expect that with a regular deck of cards, people would rather play war or go fish or solitaire or poker or blackjack. There's one of the many solitaires and so many solitaires out there. Any of those may even have slightly more complicated rules than this game does, but the individual cards themselves don't have rules, so there's less memorization going on there. So well, if I compared myself to that character or that character, I would have potentially won. There, we're knocked out of the round, and at that point you might as well just fast forward, but it moves fast enough that it doesn't matter. It would also make a lot of sense for this to play faster now at this point. And I think Ticket to Ride, just to compare to some of the Asmodee games that I've covered, Ticket to Ride is way better than this game. I think Carcassonne, Catan, way better than this game. This is very, very simplistic. And you'd still need to carry a special deck of cards with you. Which, that is not really what you would want as far as a pick up and play game, and to have to bring a special card, a special deck just to play this one card game. Let's see. So now, as long as I don't lose and they run out of cards, I should win with the countess here. I like the theme of this, though, I will say. Like, there's nothing wrong, I think, with the nothing wrong with the Renaissance theme that's happening here. So you could definitely have done something more with that. I think there is definitely the Your Highness, Your Majesty card games where you're swiping left and swiping right, and that's much more of an experience. Alright, well, let's see if we can get rid of that. Okay, we've just eliminated that character in the next turn because we used the priest to see the card. Yeah, Clue is much more of a deduction game. Oh, Daedalus just saved this character. Is gonna win now. Unless somebody else can make her discard the princess card. Yeah, I definitely do feel like this is... Wow. They did keep it going. This really should be a case where there's at least 4 princesses. Or at least 3. Or 1 more princess is added for every player in the game. It's strange, to say the least, that there isn't a courtroom jester, or like just general maids, cooks, butlers, knights, like what else would you expect? Footmen, peasants, page boys, let's see. Stable people. Like, there's a lot of Renaissance era characters that could be depicted, certainly more. It could be a crazy Michelangelo, Da Vinci style of inventor and artists, and you have priests, but you could easily have a priest, a bishop, a pope, and then you'd have 3 tiers there. You have a prince and a king, which that's probably as good as it's going to be. But there seems to be no queen at all. Or, yeah, just a princess, which seems to be weird. Yeah, the queen could help the princess find her true love and thus steal the princess from a character and give it to you. And these little coin things don't mean anything at all. That maybe they mean something when playing multiplayer. Alright, well, I guess that's going to be a spotlight for Love Letter. There's really not anything more to say here. Anytime I play a board game, there is always the question about would you be better off playing this on Tabletop Simulator, even if you would have to buy Tabletop Simulator and DLC to use the Love Letter cards on Tabletop Simulator. I think the answer is almost certainly yes, because then you have more of a chat function and a VR function in Tabletop Simulator from what I have seen. So that is another consideration, but generally I think Love Letter is just not that good of a game. And inherently, there's a reason why the games that were created hundreds and if not thousands of years ago that are still around and played are still around and played. Like, because they've withstood the test of time, and this one really does not meet that criteria at all. This was pretty much forgotten even in the first launch window of the game, and that's why it has only 130 reviews, when board games like this, whether they're Hasbro games or Asmodee games, should have way more sales and they should be promoted way more often. But they can't be promoted by most people because most people who have played them probably come to a very similar conclusion as mine, which is that they're not worth playing digitally or physically. That's where I have to end this spotlight. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.